Huh?
Huh, why aren't you in bed?
The bear napping!
Why aren't you in bed?
Shut up!
I need your help! Need our help with what exactly?
I have it all figured out. The lover in the Lover's Arcana isn't traditionally supposed to be the woman, but the man. In fact, the entire card seems awfully male-connoted to me. So why is it that the Persona series always uses teenage idols or models to represent this card? What does it mean that all these Lover's Arcana Persona users are all female? What does it mean?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It means that Atlas has reappropriated the card's symbolism to make space for an archetype very pivotal to the Japanese media industry of today. The Waifu Arcana! I said, the Waifu Arcana! By the way, aren't you going to flirt with me?
I was going to, but you're kind of scaring me.
Ever since we discussed The Magician, you've surely noticed that there's been an awful lot of talk about two specific archetypes in these videos, namely the anima and the animus, representing basic human femininity and masculinity respectively. Well, this is what it's all been building up to. Dear friends, now at Arcana number 6, we reached a point where our two archetypal friends finally meet face to face. The Lover's Arcana is quite the interesting card, if alone for the fact how different it can look depending on the deck you have. There's the Rider-Waite form featuring a naked man and woman coming together, calling to mind Adam and Eve, which seems quite straightforward about the theme of the card. Then there's also the Marseilles form of the card, which is called the Lover, singular, and perplexingly adds a second woman into the mix of the card's illustration. Now, just who is this second lady, and where did she come from all of a sudden? Is she an old flame of our male friend here? Does he owe her money, perhaps? No. Things become a lot clearer as soon as we look at the keywords commonly associated with the Arcana. Along with several probably very unsurprising terms such as relationships, intimacy, and sexuality, we find one word that doesn't quite seem to fit the bunch. Choice. Despite what the Persona series might make you think, traditionally in tarot readings, the key figure of the 2 to 4 pictured on the card is believed to be the human man. That's because the card's theme is the encounter of the animus with the anima, and what happens to the animus when he is forced to interact with the anima. Since in Jung's writings all people have feminine and masculine parts to their psyche, this card can of course still apply to anyone, regardless of their own gender. However, it makes it quite puzzling that the Persona series decided to make it appear as if this card was strictly female exclusive.
So what I deduce from this is, the reason why all these Lover's Arcana Persona users are attractive teenage girls with a promising career in show business isn't because it is meaningful to the Arcana. No, the reason for this has to be something deeper, darker.
And you need us for that because...
Morgana, you're originally from the Velvet Room, aka Tarot Arcana Central. Also, you've spent an impressive amount of time stalking Aunt Takamaki.
What? I'm not stalking her. I just really appreciate the way those curtains frame the edge of her window.
Teddy, you have the ability to sense the arcana of shadows and personas, and you're also obsessed enough with the girls in your group to know there's 3 sizes better than your own identity.
How rude! I'll let you know that it's not only their sizes are researched.
I guess it's here to evaluate the data.
Why do people always assume that I am good at that?
Together, my friends, we shall unravel all mysteries. We shall know the secret of the showgirl lovers.
I do not see how this is relevant to your analysis. Let's start looking at the cards. We'll have to look at both the Rider-Waite and Marseilles varieties, since Persona has used both kinds of illustrations on their own versions of the decks. The difference between using plural the lovers versus singular the lover doesn't help either, since in the original Japanese version of the games, the arcana is called renai, roughly translating to passionate love, and not referring to people at all. Starting out with the Rider-Waite type illustration, because that's what Persona 2, 3 and 4 use, we see our Adam and Eve-like figures standing in front of what is often assumed to be a heavenly authority, like an angel. We'll come back to this figure later. For now, however, I'd like to draw your attention to the background behind the woman, which shows A tree with fruit and a snake wound around it. Okay, I think it's pretty clear what the symbolism here is all about. Dear viewers, we've come upon one of the most ubiquitous scenes depicted in Abrahamic art. The fall of man. The fall of man, to refresh your memory, is the event in Hebrew law during which the first humans, tempted by the deceitful snake, decided to go against the limitations set upon them by God and ate from the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, becoming aware of morality and themselves in the process. This event is often painted as a deeply negative one in most interpretations, but I personally don't think it's quite as simple. If one reads the fruit of knowledge of good and evil as a metaphor for the evolution of self-awareness and sapience, then the reason why devouring it brought such harsh punishment with it becomes clear. Being self-aware and thus personally responsible for all choices you make in life just kind of really sucks sometimes. They say ignorance is bliss, but once you are aware of what's at stake around you and that your choices have consequences, you can't just be blissfully ignorant anymore. That's what the fall of man is about to me personally. We as sapient humans have evolved the ability to make our own choices. Accordingly, we must take responsibility for their lasting consequences. We can't rely on a higher power or nature itself to bear responsibility for us. Phew, that was a stupidly serious tangent I went on there. Let's try and tie this back to our main theme, shall we? The people we see on this card are clearly lovers, two human beings in an intimate, loving relationship. However, their romance alone is not the primary theme of the card. It's what their relationship means for their lives that really matters. After all, deciding to spend your lives and share all further big decisions with one another is a pretty big responsibility, right? Ha, I did it. The theme of this illustration, as I've said before, is the encounter between the anima and the animus, human quintessential femininity and masculinity. The feminine side, Eve, comes in contact with the snake and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the possibility of acquiring self-awareness and the ability to make your own choices. The masculine side, Adam, stands on the other side of the illustration and must decide whether sharing Eve's choice is worth the consequences. He must decide if Eve and the fulfillment the fruit she offers brings is worth hell. This isn't just about their love, it's about making a conscious decision to dedicate yourself to that love, about being at a major crossroad in your life and knowing exactly which road you want to take, and being able to, without a doubt, declare your choice to the world itself, symbolized by the heavenly authority witnessing the lover's choice. Adam and Eve in this card make a conscious choice to be together in breaking the one taboo God gave to them. Maybe that's even the first conscious choice they've ever made in their lives. So whatever happens after, they'll have to take responsibility for it. Together. This is what this card is all about. But what does that mean for the other illustration? You know, the Marseille's one, which Persona 5's design of the card is based on? Well, the figures on this card look decidedly less primordial. Likewise, the tree of good and evil is absent. Instead, we get a second woman vying for the male character's attention and Cupid pointing his arrow at him. Interesting. If you consider that this is technically still the same arcana as before, and that thus the themes must at least be similar, we can quickly make some deductions. Our animus character is still there, but rather than only being faced with a single embodiment of his opposite, the anima, here he's faced with two. He has two options to pick from. A properly dressed, crowned one, who seems rather prim and proper, and a beautiful, alluring one. People more familiar with Atlas's games might already be thinking of the game Catherine at this point, to which I say, yes, that was the intent of that game. Representing the themes of this version of the Lover's Arcana right there on the box art. In the context of Catherine, the protagonist, Vincent, takes the role of the animus character on the card and is forced to choose between two possible paths in life. Eloping with K Catherine, a prim, proper woman of rule and restrictions, or staying with C Catherine, an unrestrained woman of freedom and irresponsibility. In doing so, Vincent is swayed by his lustful desires, represented by Cupid's arrow. In other words, this illustration is still about the great life choices that one must take when animus and anima encounter one another. But here, the focus is more on the fact how difficult it is to decide. Rather than painting the protagonists as sure of their choice and ready to have God himself bear witness to it, here our masculine protagonist is still trying to figure out what choice he's even supposed to take. And he's still having trouble taking control of and responsibility for said choices. So in the Marseille's illustration, it seems less like the lovers are ready to actually live with the consequences of their choice, and more like they'll just have to deal with it when it happens, come what may. As you can see, while love is still an important theme of the Arcana, the theme is far less generalized than one might think at first. It's not the archetype of a person you love. It's the archetype of the choices you make out of love. The choice to love someone. The choice to dedicate yourself to that path in life. The choice to do something that you love. The choice to decide what really matters most to you in your life. This is the primary central theme of the Lover's Arcana.
However, does this explain why all the girls related to the Arcana in the series are beautiful, career-oriented showbiz girls with a crush on the protagonist? No, it does not!
Actually, after careful evaluation of your explanation, I do believe that this Arcana is indeed very suitable to represent Yukari-san's way of life.
Yeah, geez, I don't know what your problem is, lady. Yuka-chan and Rise-chan are very good when it comes to choices.
Lady Anne has decided to join my Phantom Thieves after all, so clearly she makes the best life choices.
The three of you may have a point.
As much as it irks me that the Persona team always, without fail, assigns the Arcana to the most waifu-like girl on the party in each and every game, thus giving the impression that the primary criterion for the Lover's Arcana is indeed being literally the most viable love interest, rather than having a character arc determined by the ability to make life and love choices, I have to admit that the four girls related to the Arcana in the series are still all pretty good fits for the card regardless. Persona 2's Lisa Silverman, I refuse to call her Ginkgo, has a large part of her arc revolve around wanting to take control over her life and make her own choices. From a young age on, her weeaboo parents have been trying to raise her into being a stereotypical Japanese woman, despite her Caucasian genetics making it impossible for her peers to accept her as such. She rebelled by developing an intense interest in Chinese language and pop culture instead, going as far as to learn how to speak Cantonese. She's also experimented with hard drugs and uncompensated dating. That's another encounter of the animus with the anima, Lisa refusing to bend to the will of her father and making the very opposite kind of choices instead. Even if said choices bring consequences she will have to deal with for the rest of her life. On the other hand, Lisa also allows her friends Miho and Chiba to coax her into becoming part of the idol group they want to form, even though she personally did not feel up for becoming an idol. In that instance, she made a choice which wasn't really her own, simply because she did not want to disappoint her friends. Actually, most of her choices can be characterized like this. Her life is full of important but often poor decisions she made not out of love, but either purely to rebel against her parents or to maintain the few important relationships she does have in her life. The first life choice Lisa takes truly out of her own love occurs right before she receives her ultimate persona, Venus, when she faces her shadow duplicate and tells Tatsuya that she'll stick by his side, even if he thinks she's selfish and can't return the love she feels for him. In that moment, Lisa becomes ruled by the upright Lover's Arcana rather than the reverse one, as the choices she makes become truly her own, thus making her comfortable with their consequences. I may not know this Lisa-san, but I do feel that Yukari-san's case is quite similar.
You're her roommate here, I guess. Take it away.
Yukari-san has informed me how after the death of her father, her mother's behavior began to change and become erratic, with her taking to maintaining a multitude of short-lived relationships with men. Disgusted and disappointed by these mannerisms in her mother, Yukari-san herself became distant towards boys, which I believe manifested quite clearly in her often cold treatment of Junpei-san. She attempted to act as what she perceived to be the exact opposite of her mother's mannerisms, even refusing an intimate friendship with our leader for the longest time, as she perceived her mother's behavior as a sign of weakness. She wanted to be strong on her own, thus also refusing to put her trust into other members of SEAS, especially Mitsuru-san. Only after our defeat of Erebus was she able to truly open herself up to us others. That is true, Yukari made a decision to fight for her father's memory, but the decision wasn't powered by her love as much as it was by her despair in the face of the loss of her father. Her social interactions in school seemed very superficial during that time, and she forbid herself from trusting others. Only by meeting the protagonist and, inspired by them, realizing that closing herself off was just another form of running away, Yukari eventually decides to face life head-on, being honest about her emotions to those around her, and becoming Mitsuru's best friend in the process. She also resolves to help change the world into a place where nobody wishes for the fall, in loving memory of the protagonist's sacrifice. Yukari becoming a model and actress is a manifestation of this resolve. It's her way of giving people a reason to smile in this world. The life choices she makes are finally true to herself.
Oh, I get it. Well, Risa-chan's pretty good at life choices too. Like choosing to be the cutest, most smile-inducing idol out there ever. Or choosing to give pets to my fluffy fur. Oh, and you can't fault her for her taste in Sensi either. I'd be head over heels for myself if my attention weren't so unbearably split already.
Yeah, Risa is perhaps one of the clearest examples of a lover's persona user exemplifying the decision aspect of the arcana that we have.
I can feel the pressure myself now. Oh, lover's arcana, you cruel mistress. Must I decide? There's so many lovely maidens to choose from, and so little time in my life.
You're going off screen in 3 seconds.
No, wait, I'm not done yet.
Risa Kujikawa's entire character conflict stems from her trying to come to terms with the life choices she's made and whether they actually allow her to properly express her own emotions. Uncomfortable with herself due to her past of being bullied, she's been jumping around from choice to choice, trying to find something that defines her, failing to realize for the longest time that her identity is ultimately something she has to carve for herself as a combination of all her life choices, rather than something predetermined she can escape into if she just searches for it long enough.
Right, Risa-chan and I were a bit similar in that respect. She and I both didn't know that the real self was who we decided to be, so we were both scared of being someone we didn't want to be. We were both running away.
Yeah, but your reasons for doing so were very different. Where Teddy was afraid of an identity he couldn't relate to anymore due to an internal conflict, Risa's burnout from her stage persona as Reset stemmed from a fear of Reset dominating the way she personally felt and wanted to express herself. Only when Risa realizes how much she really loves the show business, she's able to take things into her own hands and refashion the Reset stage name into what she wants it to be, a vessel to express her own emotions through, and thus a firm part of her identity, just as much as being a persona user and being an average girl who just wanted to hang out with her friends as part of her identity. She thus makes the life decision to be the Risa she enjoys being, even if it means having to live with the stress that comes with being an idol, and also fighting against her agency and studio mandates as much as she needs to not burn out again. Again, this is a life choice made out of love. Risa's love for self-expression, that is.
Risa-chan really is a lovely lady.
But not as lovely as my lady.
Yeah, we're getting there. Alright, it's your turn now, Mona. What can you tell us about Anne's connection to the Lover's Arcana?
You're asking me something pretty complex there. Are you sure you're ready for the answer? I'll let you know that my understanding of Lady Anne's emotions is quite deep and intimate.
The short version, please.
She's a little unsure of what she wants to do with her life.
Oh wow, haven't heard that one before today.
Hey, she has good reasons. Have you seen what happened to her? It's no wonder she never had the chance to decide where she wants to take herself, with all these things holding her back. Not only did everyone in her school make assumptions about her personality based on her appearance alone, isolating her from other students, she also had to live being used like a doll by that disgusting piece of scum Suguru Kamoshida. It's only after she almost lost the person most important to her that Lady Anne could finally decide to rebel against the fate she'd been enduring and stand up for herself and her friend, taking control of her own body and life. Her love for her friend Shiho and her desire to avenge her is what gives her the resolve to awaken her persona. Yes, she's similar to Lisa, who awakened to Venus thinking of her love to Tetsuya, and to Yukari, who awakened to Io out of her love for her father in that regard. However, Anne's connection to the Arcana doesn't end here. Soon after getting her persona, Anne decides to steal her willpower, making a conscious decision to become a strong person. However, she doesn't yet have a clear concept where to take that choice just yet. So she just kind of goes for whatever she happens to find. Clearly that doesn't exactly amount to much and leads her to falter a lot, which again is something she has in common with Risa. Finally, Anne realizes she has a love for acting and modeling. Oh wow, how original for this Arcana. Okay, I'll stop. And decides to dedicate herself to her modeling career, something she only saw as a way to connect to her parents from time to time before that. This is especially remarkable since doing so, she overcomes the trauma of Kamoshida's abuse, as modeling was how she first ended up being noticed by him. So by making her modeling career her own, of her own volition, Anne takes back agency over her life and body in yet another way. It's her own decision and one she makes out of love for the work, just like how we said it.
So all in all, we can conclude that all 4 of these girls are pretty good matches for the archetype represented by the Lover's Arcana.
Correct.
Yeah, I agree.
So, what did you need us for again?
I thought you guys would prove me wrong about it.
Wrong? Why?
Because it's just so goddamn annoying!
Don't get me wrong, I have no problem with the Persona series being filled with cute girls. I really don't. But the way an entire Arcana has been appropriated to be reserved exclusively for the use by cute, romantically eligible girls, who happen to be extra desirable because of a career in showbiz, just has been starting to get on my nerves. With the arguable exception of Yukari, all of the other Lovers girls seem to have been directly patterned after Lisa's example too. Risa is an idol whose name is pronounced almost exactly the same as Lisa's, and whose old concept art looks almost identical to her. And Anne just adapted Lisa's backstory of having been bullied for being the only white girl in her school, whole sake. It's really disappointing how the games just willingly pass up every chance they get to do something new with the Arcana, instead opting to just do yet another variation on the same character over and over and over again. I freaking love Risa, but even I have to admit it was embarrassingly blatant how her character was derived straight from Lisa, and Anne was just the final killing blow. The Lover's Arcana is so much more than an excuse to have a dedicated waifu in your game, you guys. There's so much more you can do with it. I just want them to take more chances with their possibilities. Please. Persona isn't especially good at portraying romances as it is. I really don't need the series to have a dedicated slot for most desirable girl in its party and social link lineup every single time.
So, let me get this straight. You don't want at least one guaranteed cute lover girl in every single Persona game?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow, I can't relate to you.
I love you, but I hate you.
Phew, this really took a while, huh? Everyone, thank you so much for waiting so patiently for this video. I know I got a little more opinionated towards the end than I usually do in these videos, but I hope it was still enjoyable regardless. Special thanks to my brother who held the camera for the skits, and Triple who provided the voice for Teddy, which is an incredibly difficult voice to do, believe me, I've tried, and deserves mad respect. Now if you all want to help me too, feel free to like this video or subscribe to my channel. Trust me, you have no idea how much of a difference that really makes. If you still want to do a little bit more to help, I've also got a Patreon you can support me at. Well then, see you next video. Bye!